amazing. Okay, so, well, with that, let's give it up. Let's hear Dr. Harder's story.
Wow. Thank you, Peaks, and thanks everyone. Let's see if I can, how many gays does it take to, no, okay, we'll do that, all right. Okay everyone, this is a story I wrote out, and it's called The 88. The 88, I had been told, was a club where a boy could make his fortune. A lap dance lounge where the ubiquitous but still enigmatic champagne room practically overflowed with cash, where the doorman had to safely escort dancers into their cabs at the end of the night, so flush with tips they didn't dare travel home by subway. I made so much money I almost bought a fur coat, Wyatt bragged to me. It was a particularly slow night at the Cock in the East Village, and Wyatt and I lazily toe-touched in place over the bar top. For context, I was still pretty green at this point in my go-go dancing career and had no experience yet with lap dance clubs. Instead, I worked at gay bars where I got paid a base for dancing for 4 or 5 hours, plus whatever tips I could earn. At the Cock, the base was, and still is, $60. But regardless of the fee, every dancer had to develop their own technique for getting tipped. It is one of those studied citational practices that is not as dependent on luck so much as it is on how well you read other people reading and wanting your body, or not. I focused my own method on those guys who were too shy to stare, but bold enough to hover just within the red luminescence of the Cock's neon rooster. I'd raise my left eyebrow mischievously, flash a smile, and direct the momentum of my hips or the vortex of my ass in their direction. While not an exact science, frequently enough, a man would emerge from the crowd, and after a few minutes of admiring or fondling, he'd deposit his tips in my socks or the pouch of my jockstrap, or, if I really liked him, between my butt cheeks. In the industry, we call that the reverse ATM. So I can be clear, I loved go-go dancing. It was sexual but social, exhibitionistic yet intimate, my introduction into the gig economy of New York, where I no longer had to commit myself to the confines of a 9-to-5 schedule and the exhausting grind of the food service industry. With go-go dancing, I fluttered from bar to bar as a semi-nude free agent. Sometimes when I wasn't working but wanted to go out, I would run up to the front of a winding line outside of a club and with a panicked look on my face, flash my jockstrap at the bouncer and exclaim, "I'm working tonight and I'm late." Access was usually granted. Even when I actually was working, I could space out and dream up ideas for plays or run lines for monologues in my head, and when I needed to, I would let gravity sink me back down into the hands of a stranger and complete another transaction. Unlike waiting tables or even auditioning, most nights go-go dancing, I felt like myself, and my booking and my tips were because I acted like myself. Of course, not every night at the Cock was a thrilling, self-affirming marketplace. The bar had a $10 minimum cover charge even on weeknights and could be a hard sell on a Tuesday, which was always my night. On that particular Tuesday with Wyatt, the crowd was not only slim, but my tried and true combination of eyebrow smile, ass shake seemed to be less alluring for some reason. Too drunk or too much self-esteem, Wyatt observed of the few stragglers. At the 88, lap dances start at $100, he oozed. If I had paid more attention, I might have asked Wyatt why he was still go-go dancing at the Cock instead of raking in cash at the 88, but like I said, I was, and still am, a pretty gullible person. Before I could reply to Wyatt, though, a patron quickly stuck what felt like a wad of cash in my go-go sock before patting my calf and quickly walking away. Vibrating back to life, I excitedly reached down to grab the tip, only to discover it was a folded up €5 note with a streak of dried blood down its crease. Okay, I said, how do I get into the 88? As I soon discovered, the answer to that question was almost as difficult as selling a lap dance. Unlike my regular gigs, the 88 charged a house fee of $60, the same rate I was paid to dance at the Cock. But Wyatt had assured me that most dancers made back their money within their first hour. Just do your little butt thing, sweetie, he encouraged. Now at the club's threshold, my problem wasn't the 88's house fee, but the fact that the doorman was trying to cheat me into paying it twice. I literally just paid you, I said, hoping he had somehow forgotten while my backpack was being searched, even though I was the only dancer in the lobby. Magically, the manager of the 88 appeared, a brick in a three-piece suit. Hey, if there's a problem, leave. This was obviously not a flash or jockstrap and go kind of situation. I'm a friend of Wyatt's, I tried again. As if in chorus, both doorman and manager simultaneously replied, who the fuck is Wyatt? I was too stunned to respond, and it was too late to try and dance somewhere else. I handed over another $60. Once inside, the 88 was smaller than I had imagined, roughly the same size as the Cock, which was basically a cement garage with a bathroom. In place of the Cock's deconstructed charm, the 88 consisted of a sunken lounge dotted with a few padded footstools, a tiny mirrored stage, and an even smaller bar. To my far right, and elevated by a small set of stairs, a dark red velvet curtain signified the entrance to the champagne room, the mystique of which was further heightened by matching velvet ropes and two glittering stanchions. At that moment, the lounge was packed with dancers, and even though I had worked at several bars across the East Village and Chelsea, I was not prepared for the sea change of these bodies. These dancers were statuesque, athletes, bodybuilders. The abundance of muscle on display matched only by a collective attitude of cockiness verging on boredom. Instead of the jockstraps Wyatt and I wore at the Cock, the dancers sported expensive-looking Speedos or Calvin Klein underwear or, most perplexing, boxer briefs. These guys look like they're straight, I thought. And as it turned out, many of them were. If I had felt over my head at the entryway to the 88, I was now quickly sinking into the quicksand of its plush carpet. 3 hours later, I was now $115 in the hole, thanks to an elderly man in pressed khaki shorts who gave me $5 to stop talking to him. As hard as I tried to smile and flirt, I just couldn't find my groove. At the Cock, the crowd was always a mix of East Village regulars and Times Square tourists, and basically people who were very horny and very happy to remunerate. But at the 88, the energy was wolfish, vulpine. I watched a dancer in a lime green Speedo hover near a client whose face was almost entirely obstructed by a Yankees baseball cap. Green Speedo arched his back and flexed his ass, cheating out just enough so that he could glance over his shoulder. In response, Yankees baseball cap tilted his chin up so that the horizon line of his eyes barely peeked out from his bill. Speedo shrugged as if bored, shifting weight to inflate his other ass cheek, and then he walked away. Instead of following him, though, baseball cap slowly rose to his feet and took the opposite route of the dancer. Serendipitously, they rendezvoused a minute later on the steps of the champagne room, where with the flourish of a 24-hour chaplain, the manager instantly rematerialized and ushered them through the velvet passageway. Don't get me wrong, I was impressed. If present me could have somehow spoken to old me in that moment, I might have used one of those expensive academic words and said something like, the ontology of the lap dance isn't seduction, it's deception. Except this was a lap dance club, and even present me knows that old me knew that no one gave a fuck about what ontology meant. Suddenly, someone touched me on the shoulder. Excuse me. Startled, I turned around to see a muscular man in an Eddie Bauer t-shirt and cargo pants. God, these dancers are really straight, I thought. Are you free? The man sputtered. Are you available now? It took me several seconds to realize that not only was he asking me for a lap dance, I had been pacing outside of the champagne room. Most strippers and dancers will tell you that every so often you get a client that makes you feel like you should be paying them. I would pretend that I don't know why we say that, but I think it's actually pretty obvious. Despite beauty being the most banal, the most random, the most conventional, if not inadequate vector of a person's worth, it is usually the currency with the highest purchase when you are selling sex. And this man, who was a construction worker from Orange, New Jersey, who was not out to his friends or family, and who, despite feeling out of place as I did, was the most expensive looking person in the 88. As my eyes adjusted to the interior of the champagne room, it struck me less like a room and more like the champagne shed. There was a small bench, a box, and a cheap glass table holding the wilted petal of a condom wrapper. I don't really want a lap dance, the man said. Once again realizing I had no clue about the unspoken rules of this world, I replied, okay. What do you want? Just do what feels natural, dude. The irony, of course, is that nothing about that moment, or for that matter, the entirety of the 88 felt fucking natural to me. But looking at the go-go box again, I said, I'm just going to dance. So I did. For the first song, and then the next one, and then the next one. Every time a song ended, I expected the man to get up and leave, but he just sat on the bench and watched. Sometimes smiling, many times scanning my body, but rarely looking me in the eyes. How do you feel, he finally asked, as he bought a fourth lap dance and ordered a beer. Now, just in case you thought I was going to go there, this is not the gay version of Pretty Woman. I don't end this story hoping Mr. Construction Worker will whisk me back to his palace in Orange, New Jersey, or even that he'll come visit me in the cock. He didn't. How did I feel? Stupid that I'd ever thought I could trust Wyatt? Sexy, having hundreds of dollars spent on me? Relieved that I would make back the money stolen from me at the door? Of course. But most of all, I felt that feeling that I had in those first few years of go-go dancing in gay bars, when I was still fresh in New York, when the rules I had originally arrived with were suddenly diffused by the light of the ATM, when working in nightlife was of course about chasing beauty and selling sex, but also the time it could buy you to think through your next steps as you danced in place on a bar top. I actually don't even remember now what I said to him, but what I'm trying to say to you is, at that moment, I just felt like myself.